Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Unraveling Colonial Threads, the panel with True Tribal. I'm Jasper. I'm the Indigenous programmer here at the Museum of Vancouver. If you're far away, I just want to let you know we're on the stolen and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And um, the Unraveling Colonial Threads is something that was established by my predecessor here at the museum. It's an ongoing series that is starting a conversation that um, is the impact of colonialization by the process and processing them through traditional Indigenous arts. So I thought this would be a perfect way to bring in our exhibition, True Tribal, and this ongoing conversation. This panel is recorded. I don't know if you heard that when you got in here, but we will be recording them and it'll be used for museum purposes. If audiences could keep off their video and keep muted, that would be great because we want to focus on our panelists here. And there will be a Q&A at the end. So if you want to put in any questions in the chat, we can go through them and we can read them out at the end for our panelists and our moderator. uh, so I will also be keeping track of time. I'll give you a few heads ups halfway through and maybe a 10 minutes too. Um, so I would just like to invite Dion now, the artist and curator of True Tribal, and he'll be our moderator tonight.
Hey everyone, my name is Dion Kaszas. I'm a Hungarian, Métis, and Inthakatmuk born-again Coyote. Here as a co-curator for True Tribal Contemporary Expressions of Ancestral Tattoo Practices. I would like to first acknowledge Mireille Bourgeois, who is a co-curator with me for True Tribal. And I'd also like to thank the Iota Institute, Museum of Vancouver, and the Canada Council for the Arts. They have all supported, of course, Museum of Vancouver, and Iota is an exhibition project manager for me. I'd also like to thank Sharon Fortney from the Museum of Vancouver, the Indigenous curator there. Sharon has been a great help. And so it looks like I'm supposed to intro myself and tell you how I came about curating True Tribal. So I guess the short version of that is that I started tattooing in 2009, and in 2012, I started officially started the revival of Inthakatmuk tattooing. And since that time, I've been continuing research in anthropological textbooks, in museum collections, and developing what has just been printed, the Inthakatmuk Visual Dictionary and Knowledge Basket. So it's actually a research resource for my community. And so I ended up at the Museum of Vancouver because of the excellent collection they have of interior Salish visual and material culture, specifically baskets. And so that's how I ended up at the Museum of Vancouver, among many other institutions. And talking with the curators there and the CEO, etc. I was invited and we had a good conversation about starting hosting an exhibition at Museum of Vancouver. And True Tribal was birthed from those conversations and that research. And when I think about this exhibition, it's really about centering the reality of Indigenous tattooing and the revival of it, and honoring and holding up all tools and technology, and allowing space for every person who needs to do the work in the way that they need to do it. And also honoring the fact that our people don't always have access to people who maybe use traditional tools and technology. And so to allow for space within our communities and our cultures to move into this contemporary time. So, and from the research and from the Inthakatmuk Visual Dictionary, I've created Inthakatmuk Blackwork, which is a contemporary Inthakatmuk tattoo style that includes large sections of black work and ancestral design symbols and motifs. And so that's my introduction, how I got here, and how we ended up here. And so I would just like to pass off the microphone, the virtual microphone, to Nathalie to introduce yourself, and then pass it on down the line.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nathalie Standingcloud. I was born and raised in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. My dad is Creek and Cherokee, and my mom is Salish, Kootenai, Wenatchee, and Colville. I've been tattooing since 2018. My dad introduced me to tattooing, and I love what I do. So I'm going to hand it to Tristen.
Sorry, guys. I'm muting. My name is Tristen Jenni Sanderson. I am from Chegaste Basin, Saskatchewan, but I currently reside here in Treaty 6 in Edmonton, Alberta. My mom's Woodland Cree and my father's Plains Cree. They're both from Saskatchewan. My mom's from way up north up there. And I've been tattooing since I was so about 5 years now. I don't know what date that was. 5 years ago, 2019-ish, I guess, is when I started. Yeah, go ahead. No.
Buddy, can you see me? Okay, yeah, my name is Nolan Malbeuf. I'm originally from this place called Beauval, Saskatchewan, northwest Saskatchewan. I come from a long line of Métis. My parents are both Métis on both sides. I've been tattooing it'll be 13 years in October. I thought my destiny was to be a teacher, so I did that for 15 years, and about 10 years in, tattooing snagged me, so I 2 years ago retired from teaching to tattoo full time, and I'm really grateful to be here. And before I pass it on, I just wanted to say, Dion, man, you have sexy hair, bro.
Doesn't have frosted tips anymore, not like back in the day. All right, thank you for introducing everyone. I would I guess let's just start, let's continue with the same format we've just had. So Nathalie, I'm going to ask you one of the questions, and I'll just ask you to respond however you see fit, and then I'm going to ask one of the other panelists to respond and or add their answer to this question. And it's a riff off the title for this panel discussion, and it is, how does your practice do the work of unraveling colonial threads?
I like how you put that, unraveling colonial threads. So I was thinking about this question, and what I thought of was, well, when our Native people were first being colonialized and genocide was happening, one of the ways to do that was to get rid of Indigenous self-expression, aka tattoos. And where I live, being in Oklahoma nowadays, some people refer to the place where I live as being part of this Bible Belt, meaning the place that I live can be seen as very religious and conservative. And oftentimes I hear so many people say that marking your body semi-permanently with tattoos could be considered against the Bible. So So the way that I, in my works, do the work of unraveling colonial threads is that I've had the pleasure of tattooing a lot of people who are the first in their family to get tattooed. And that's my spill.
Yeah, it's such a powerful testimony to become visible to the world as a person connected to land and community and territory. So, you know, it is such a powerful thing. It was pretty cool to spend time down there and people looking at all of us with their tattooed faces and the crew that were there. They're all like, what's going on? But yeah, it's pretty cool to hang out down there. So I'm just going to ask Nolan, do you have a response to Nathalie's piece there, or do you have a answer yourself to the question of how does your practice through the work of Unraveling Colonial Threads?
Well, I think that one thing that I've come to realize and understand about the cultural tattooing that I do is I never set out to do that. I never had a vision to do that. It just was born out of hardship in my own life, pain and stuff, and addiction. And long story short, I was in treatment, and that's where I started drawing these designs that I call muskiki, which is the Cree word for medicine. And so as my journey started to lay out before me, and as I started to tattoo and develop the style more, I started to just be more conscious of the value of it, the identity tied to it, the significance of it, because the work is closely tied to beadwork that I grew up seeing. I see relatives beading and stuff like that, and so that even the history of the Métis is so closely tied to the beadwork as being part of our identity. So when I started to understand and realize the power of what I was doing, I started associating this work with a pride in my identity and where I come from. Like I grew up fighting. I want to fight as an adult. I want to fight. I want to box. I just started going back to Muay Thai last week. It's part of who I am. And I thought it was so strange that I have this part of me that just wants to fight. But on the flip side, I go to tattoo and I love tattooing flowers. I couldn't make sense of it. Like it's kind of contradictory. But I was told one time though, aren't you Métis? Like people of the flower people? And then it made sense. And so when I think about the work that I do, I think about my identity, my history, our resiliency, and all that good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate both of those answers to that powerful question. And just as before we continue, I forgot to say thank you to everyone who's popped in to watch our panel. It's awesome to have you all here. I see some familiar names in there, and I can picture your faces, so don't worry about that. But I'm excited that you're all here to spend this time with us talking about this important topic of the ancestral skin marking and the reinvigoration of our communities and cultures through the use of our ancestral visual languages. And so I would just like to ask Tristen the question, what impact has this work had on your community members and in your larger community?
I feel like I don't know, I feel like the visualness of like having this has, I don't know, really helped a lot of people. I've tattooed so many like cookums, like grandmas and like chefans, which great grandmas and things like that, come and get their first tattoos at like 65, and they're like, oh, this is so amazing and so beautiful, like being able to like wear this with pride, like a regalia, and everybody sees it, it's permanently on me, and I no longer have to be like ashamed, and I think like everybody being able to do that, it's so beautiful and like empowering to us, you know what I mean? Like and then kind of reclaiming, going back to your other question about the unveiling of colonial threads as well, like it's us reclaiming our power within here, you know what I mean? When you go through the process of tattooing, it's painful, it's not fun, it's not a fun process, but then it's to remind us like, hey, we can push through this, it's all in here. And it's like unlearning all that colonial stuff that they taught us, like, you got to rely on them, you got to rely on their medical system and all these other things. And it's like actually all the power that we can do all these things ourselves in here, and I really feel like tattooing helps that. It helps that way with our bodies, and to get back into here, into our bodies, and like really feel our power and the power we physically have, because we can do anything and it's amazing. And I feel like that's what it does, and that's what it's doing for my community as well. Like even just having that visual and seeing it and being like, wow, like, yes, I belong here. We're still here. You know, like I feel, I don't know, it's amazing. I'm so thankful and grateful every day that I get to do this work, and thankful for my parents because, you know, my mom would do her beadwork and my dad would sit there and he'd make regalia, and he was so like always pushing me to do this art. He's like, this is what you're meant to do, you know? And like, so it's like, it's super cool. Like, you know, like, thanks parents. Yeah, but I feel like that's kind of, you know, that's kind of what's happening. And I see more and more kids like reaching out and wanting to tattoo, and it's beautiful, and like finding their own little, you know, versions of it. And it's like, yes, like just do you, and listen to that, and like listen to your intuition in your own voice and things like that. I think it's, I don't know, it's so powerful and it's like uplifting, and I'm really hoping to just keep continuing to do that for, you know, the Indigenous community, and like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, yeah, when I think about it, it really is about that time to reconnect, like you said, to our bodies. You know, so often we're just so distracted, but when you have to sit there for a piece that's 2, 3, 4, 8, 12 hours long, you really have time to go within and to really realize how effing powerful you are, you know? So yeah, I really appreciate that response. And I would just like to pass the mic to Nathalie, because I know there is a story that you have, and you can pick it up or not, it's up to you. But I know you had a client who you tattooed a duck. You tattooed them holding a duck, which is such a powerful story in terms of the power of this work. And so if you're willing to share that story, go ahead. If not, I would ask you to respond to the question in whatever way you see fit.
Of course, Dion. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. So I did a piece not too long ago on a fellow Cherokee member, and she was telling me the story about her ancestor that has been passed down through the family. The story that this ancestor, this one memory that this ancestor had when she herself walked the Trail of Tears. And when that moment happened in her lifetime, she was just a little girl when she had to walk the trail. And the one thing that she remembers from that very traumatizing time in her life was that when she was walking the trail, she had this pet duck, and she loved this duck. And unfortunately, with all the trauma that was going down with that, the Trail of Tears, there was a time where she had unfortunately smothered the duck, and the duck had passed away. And she remembered that she had to leave the duck and bury it and leave it behind, and that was her friend for, you know, that was her comfort. And unfortunately, you know, it passed on, and that was the one thing that the ancestor remembered was this duck. And so my client was like, how can we turn this into a piece of art, because I want to remember this story. And so we did kind of like a silhouette portrait of this little girl with no face, but she was holding the duck, wearing a Cherokee tear dress with some silhouettes of soldiers behind her, and a trail and people walking behind her. But yeah, that was a story that she keeps really close to her heart and means a lot to her. Our work and how it impacts our communities. Our tattoos serve as identifiers, right? And I think that these tattoos are, they help connections at first glance. And it creates attraction, it creates conversation. And I think not only is it a tool that helps unify groups of people, but not only within my Native community, but for the larger community. I think these tattoos give permission for people to be themselves. And it helps them commit to that self-expression and you know, the beauty of body art.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I know it's a challenging story to share, and so I appreciate you sharing that in this public forum. And you know, I think when I reflect on that story, because it really impacted me, and I would really say I know a lot of the folks who are in the or you know, in the meeting are probably not from the United States. And so if you're unfamiliar with the Trail of Tears, I would highly recommend that you go and look it up and find some education around the genocidal treatment of Cherokee people, as well as a variety of other people who were forcibly genocidally relocated from their original places. And so I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, around 900 miles, which, for every mile is 1.6 kilometers for those of you who are Canadians. So that's a hell of a long walk to get to that relocation. And so that may give a bit of context to that story. And so I appreciate that. And I would say that what would you say, when I think about that, it is part of that unraveling the colonial threads, because it is about the reality of the resilience of that ancestor who made it to tell the story. And so it really is a celebration of the Cherokee community's resilience through that genocidal treatment. All right. I guess we have Nolan. I'll hand the virtual microphone over to you to answer the question. Is it important to use your ancestral visual language in your contemporary practice? And if it is, why is it important?
Well, before I touch on that, Dion, I just wanted to comment on that last question as well. It's like, there's power in these markings that we do, because, as an Indigenous person, and I'm sure many of you can relate, you're born into an inherent shame from the colonizers. We weren't seen as human beings. We were seen as less than. We were seen as demons. We were seen as even having less than, being like animals, savages, all that kind of stuff. And I think the power of this work as well is a celebrating of who we are. Tattoos are permanent. It's not like you can, I'm going to get this for today and then I'm going to put it away tomorrow. It's a permanent, lifelong statement that says, this is who I am. This is where I come from. This is who I belong to, and taking ownership and having pride in that. And I think that probably for me is the most powerful thing that I've witnessed, because I'm from the North. I didn't have a choice of if I wanted to be Métis or not. About everybody was Native where I'm from. So we never had to hide. We never had to do nothing. And I've met a lot of people that are just recently reclaiming, their Indigenous ancestry and coming to get tattoos and fully embracing that. And to be a part of that is such it's easy to take stuff for granted sometimes as a tattooer, because we tattoo so many people. But when you think on that and you realize the profound impact we have on people, it's an amazing gift and an amazing honor to be able to help people celebrate. I already forgot the question, but thankfully I have the notes here, so I'll keep talking. Yeah, I think it's really important to have the ancestral visual language, because for me, being Métis, that's in the middle. You don't really belong. You're too red for the whites and too white for the red sometimes. So you have this crisis, this identity crisis. Where do I belong? And our struggle as Métis people for a long, long time was just to exist. The first Prime Minister of Canada vowed to erase the Métis from the history of Canada. And we had lived on road allowances. We were kicked out and fought battles over land. And I don't have to go into a history lesson, but you kind of feel sometimes this inadequacy depending on where you are. And I think that as I matured into an adult and realized that, who I am is enough and who I belong to is enough. I don't have to be a tryhard. I don't have to work doubly hard to fit in. I don't have to be validated by anybody. I just need to be me, And so I think the thing that I love about the visual language, when it comes to flowers, there's a resiliency there. There's a struggle to break through. You know, there's a struggle, a fight for the seed to break the soil to fully bloom so that they can show that beauty. And I think that my work really focuses on that relationship between the dark and the light, or death and life, or the end of something and the beginning of something else, because we grow up, at least I've grown up with a profound appreciation for the land, for our mother. And there's principles there that show us that something must die in order to bring life. And so I ground my work on that. I ground that if I've had to break and take everything away, my work is ground on that relationship, built on that relationship, that, you know, there's death and there's life. There's going to be hard times in this life. There's going to be storms. The waves are going to be crashing against your boat. It's going to feel like the water's going to take you in. And then if you just stay in the boat and if you just hang on, I promise that smooth water's ahead, you know? And so I don't know if that answers your question. I'm getting pretty passionate, small room. I'm getting sweaty, but I hope that answered the question. The visual language is everything for me, because those flowers are what propel me and inspire me just to keep going. And you know what's interesting is that in the life cycle of flowers make more seeds. Those seeds fall to the ground and create more flowers. So as we move forward, we're mindful of the ones that are coming. You know, my life, I see it now. I'll be 2 years sober in September, which I never thought I would ever say in my wildest dreams or nightmares. But you become conscious of the ones that are following you, and how better to honor the ones that came before them by having a good life and for breaking trail for the young ones coming. The future's behind us. They're coming. Exactly.
I'd just like to ask Tristen if you have a response, or if you'd like to answer that question yourself.
The visual, I don't know, we're storytellers, right? So what we do. And I think like the visual, like having that is like so important. Like when I create these tattoos for people, you know, it's their story. It's their story that they get to share with the world if they want, you know, like they can show it and people ask, some people want to tell, and then others don't want to share the connection and what it means, you know, like I do a lot of like their names, you know what I mean? They're given names and things like that on their body. Of course, you know, like I was always taught we're not allowed to, like, we have to share that with very specific people, and we can't just share it with the world. Well, we're not supposed to sometimes. But like even that, you know, I think it's so beautiful to have that, and then them be able to give that gift to whoever they want, to be like, yeah, okay, I want to share this with you. I want to share this part of my life and my light and that my energy with you. And I think that, you know, it's super important for us to kind of to do that, like, and to be connected, you know what I mean, to be connected to our ancestors that way and things like that. But yeah, I think, you know, I'm super, like, I appreciate being able to do the work that I do, and help people to connect, just like Nolan was saying, you know, and help them reconnect, and to hear our stories and stories that, you know, it's beautiful. I love being able to like sit, you know, tattooing somebody and then they're, you know, gifting me their stories and telling me like, oh, this is what they were taught. I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. Like, thank you so much for sharing that with me. You know, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to hear those stories every day. And then, you know, and being like, oh, like, that, it feels like you always feel like you're friends, like you reconnected. You know, I share a room with another artist, and he's like, oh, did you know that person? Like, are you guys friends? And I'm like, well, we're friends now. I just met them today. But he's like, wow, you guys talk like you've known each other forever. And I was like, well, that's how we do it in, like, you know, native country. Like, that's how we are with one another. It's like we're all related, you know, and then that's how we should treat all, you know, we should all treat each other that way. I was like, yeah, it's really cool to be, you know, to share our visual language and things. Yeah.
Awesome. I think I'm going to ask another question, and I'm just going to leave it for either of the panelists to pick it up if they would like. And so the question is, in our practices, we each carry ancestral and communal knowledge. Is it important to protect some aspects of this knowledge? And if it is, how do you take steps to protect it? So any of you can pick it up. If not, I can say something, but I'll just leave it for a minute.
I don't have too much to add to that. I kind of struggled with that question a little bit, honestly, because I'm one of these people who really believe things should be shared, but I know that sometimes when you overshare, it could be, you know, negative as well. But for one thing, when I'm tattooing people, specifically Cherokee people, and we're talking about the visual language, when you say that, it makes me think of like our written language, because I tattoo that a lot. I use the Cherokee syllabary, and a lot of times people probably get family or get strength or something like that, but then sometimes people get like their names, right? And whatever it is, if it's a name or you know, just a word, I make sure that we look at it together with the Cherokee syllabary, and I make sure that they know how to say it. So, you know, I'm not a fluent speaker, but I can at least like look at our chart and be able to like sound it out and be like, okay, like you're gonna know how to say this before you leave, before I tattoo this on you.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Nathalie's saying too. You know, my knowledge of, you know, what I'm sharing is I just try to be faithful with what I have to offer. I also believe that things should be shared, not should be, but to me, I feel like I would rather share than gatekeep. But in saying that, I don't, you know, I didn't grow up in ceremony. Like being Métis, that's different. I mean, there's a whole range of Métis where you grow up traditional, you don't. You know, I was just raised with working hard. You work, and just be respectful to people. Be, you know, tolerance wasn't a word that was thrown around back then. It was a lifestyle. You know, if you see somebody that is hurting and they're maybe your enemy, you help them anyway. That's just it. And if somebody comes to your house, you feed them. And so, like, I've just, if I'm staying true to myself, I would much rather share, you know, these, specifically for me, the floral stuff, just to share it, you know. And when I do have, like, I've had a few, well, maybe more than a few, but experiences where I didn't feel right. And so I call my bro Gina Dunbar, and she's my my cultural liaison, you know, my bro. And so I'll bounce stuff off her. And then I always feel like if I'm honoring my gut, if I'm honoring my conscious or these feelings that I have, then if there's a check there, then I'm not gonna do the work. So I just try to, you know, we're physical beings. We have this, what Tristen was talking about, this wakuto, and it's the Cree word for kinship. We're all connected, and sometimes you get this sense that, oh, I don't know, and so then I just, no, can't do it. Or yeah, I can, you know, on the other side. So
yeah, thank you. I guess I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and pick up the microphone for this question, and it may counter some of what has been shared, which is all right. You know, I think that is the value of the circle, is that we each listen to one another to pick up those things from each other's experiences to find a fuller view of what we're looking at in the middle of the circle. So in this virtual circle, we have this question of how do we protect, or should we protect, some aspects of this practice? And I think the Intikatmuk Visual Dictionary is my answer really to that question, because at this point, it's not shared outside of community. And it's slowly being rolled out to community because not everyone has the same respect for ancestral visual languages. And some of the, especially when I think about some of the basketry designs were dream designs. And I think about some of the pictograph designs were designs that were taken from rocks that were part of an ancestor's journey into receiving their shnam or their spirit helper. Some of these design symbols and motifs were also part of a healing ceremony. And so sometimes people may take a pattern, design, symbol, motif and tattoo it on them, when in reality that design, symbol, and motif was actually placed upon another ancestor's body to rid them of an ailment. And so, you know, my answer to the question is yes, we need to share, but we also have to protect, because I believe we are stewards of Mother Earth. We are stewards of our ancestral visual languages and our cultural practices. And that is just, you know, of course, my own opinion upon this subject. And I'd also say, you know, I've had my own experiences of sharing with folks who are outside of my community who've taken liberty to take some of that knowledge and use it and present it and speak it, truth to it, as if it was their own, without acknowledging where it came from and or asking the question within themselves whether they should be, you know, espousing that this is their knowledge. And so, yeah, that's just my answer is yes, we need to protect some aspects. You know, there are some times that we need to protect it. And I will also say part of that comes to protecting the person that we're working with in some cases. So, yeah, that's my answer to that question. And I know we're rolling close to our 5:45/46 end for the this part of the panel. But I just want to give an opportunity to any of the other panelists to pick up any thoughts, comments, ideas that come up, not necessarily about specifically the last question we had, but anything that comes to mind that you feel you would like to share, because I always feel like when I leave an interview or a discussion, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have said that. So I'm just leaving that opportunity open.
If you don't mind, I'd like to take a second to read something. Just recently, I tattooed a woman. She must have been maybe like 50s or 60s. She is starting her divorce, and one thing that about her marriage is that her husband, gonna be ex-husband, is not very fond of tattoos. And one thing that she decided to do is to drive hours to come see me and get her first tattoo in celebration of this new life that she's about to have. And so after we had a great tattoo session, she left me with a gift and a card. And I'd like to read that card to kind of show everyone in here like how much our work is important and what it does for others. So this is what she said. She said, Natalie, mere words can hardly begin to express the gratitude I have for the role you have played in my healing journey. Getting a tattoo has been on my bucket list for years, and for it to have finally happened at this point in my life is monumental. The fact that our paths have crossed and you are the one to do this for me is truly significant. It's a meant to be kind of answer to a spiritual request I made that signifies the universe has heard my prayers and is rewarding me with the perfect messenger. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your time, your talent, and beautiful contribution of your spirit on my path to rediscovering myself. It has been an honor and a privilege to meet you and receive your ink. Yeah, I did it without crying.
Good job. That's awesome.
But yeah, that's just, I love what we do, and what we do is important, and the way that we mark people is transformative. And I'm so truly grateful to use my talent that creator has given to me to help people heal.
Thank you. Do either Tristen or Nolan, do you have any final thoughts before we move on to questions?
I don't think so. I'll think of it as soon as we hang up the call. And then I'll be like, oh, I should have talked about this. That's when it comes up. Not right now, because I'm like just taking it all in. You know, that's how it works.
Yep.
Well, I'd like to say that, you know, that I feel that the tattoo is only one part of the experience. You know, I think how we treat people and being intentional about what we're doing, intentional about the setting, intentional about even the music, intentional about our tools, you know, how we treat people says a lot too. You know, my one of my best friends was my tattoo artist, and at the beginning, all I wanted to do was hang out with him. And if I had to pay him to tattoo me, then that was enough for me. I would just want to go chill, right? And I think people remember that. And we're not just giving art, you know, we're giving ourselves. We're nurturing people. We're building people. These tattoos mean so much, so many different. It has so many different applications. Maybe they're getting courage from it. Maybe they're getting an identity from it. Maybe they're healing. Maybe they're having closure. And so I think it's important for me personally to remember that, you know, how we present it and how we care for it is just as important. And I would just like to say, whatever capacity we hold in our communities, I think it's very important to remember that if the young ones can see us, then they can dream. And, you know, I didn't have a lot of role models, but if they can see us, they can dream. And so that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna pass the proverbial virtual mic to Jasper to see if we have any questions.
Yeah, we got some questions. So Lydia in the chat wrote, Indigenous tattooing is a ceremonial practice in itself, but I'm curious to know if the practitioners have a spiritual practice that they incorporate in their creation and marking process.
Does anyone want to answer to that one? I can. Okay, I'll go ahead. Since
Okay.
you didn't talk in the last one.
So usually when I when I come into any tattoo or anything, I always make sure that I kind of come in with it in a good way. So I'll smudge. Usually I smudge at home first thing in the morning with my kiddos, and then I get to work, and I'm always there about an hour and a half early, so that I can sit there and almost meditate myself into, like, you know, say if, you know, we're running late or something and I feel kind of hectic. I really am aware that the energy that I'm putting out there is what other people are also going to feel. So I really want to be in that good space mentally. You know, even when I'm braiding my son's hair, it's the same thing. When I'm braiding my daughter's hair, I'm always making sure that I'm putting all those good thoughts and all these good things in there. So for me, I'm very aware of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, you know, because sometimes you get caught, like when I'm drawing, sometimes I'm like, you know, I'm not in it. And I'm like, okay, take a step back. And so before I tattoo, I really make sure that I'm sitting in a positive place, and that I'm not bringing anything personal with me in there that could be negative, that could affect, you know, our journey together, this thing that we're sharing together, you know, because, you know, I'm gifting you a piece of, you know, of my dreams and who I am, and you're also gifting me a piece of, you know, like your flesh and your part of your journey. So for me, I do that, and then, you know, and it's always beautiful. It's always a really good connection. It's always been, you know, fun laughs, big anti-laughs all the time. And then when we're done, you know, I go home and I'll smudge at home and things like that before I go to bed, and just, you know, be really thankful and very aware of, you know, releasing, because sometimes people come in with, you know, kind of traumatic things and things like that they're sharing. And it's not my job to, you know, to carry that. So I got to make sure that I really let that go as well, because that can weigh heavy, you know, if we're being sponges instead of mirrors and releasing it and just, you know, letting it go. So that's kind of like the way I kind of come about it when I'm doing anything with my work and with tattooing. Just try come in like a positive way, and always make sure that, for me, I always do the smudging, because it really helps me recenter and really, you know, give the gratitude and the thanks. And taking, you know, it takes a minute, you know, even just that minute, because I feel like we all get so busy that we kind of forget to do those things for ourselves and for others too.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight from that, and I remember it from our conversations, I believe, in the podcast interview we did, or who knows, it might have been the interview for the documentary, but I remember having that being a very impactful metaphor of what we need to do, especially when it comes to dealing with that secondary trauma, so to speak, of being a mirror as opposed to a sponge, which I felt was such an important, way to think about that work and how to deal with some of those challenges that come with working with people in different life situations. But yeah, just thank you for sharing that. It's pretty awesome. I, of course, I think for my answer is, of course, I have a practice which I use when I walk into the work, before, during, and after, and a type of maintenance throughout that practice. However, I'm not really going to share it, but I would say yes, of course, that is definitely part of it, and I always seek guidance for when some things are appropriate and some things are not appropriate. So sometimes I'll add things, sometimes I'll subtract things to the practice. There are different steps that I take when I begin a session. Sometimes I don't do those things, but that's just because that's what's needed in that situation. And so that's just part of that work. So answering the question without answering the question. Would either
Well done.
of the other panelists like to address that question, or can we move to the next one?
I heard some other tattoo practitioners in my community who do like the hand poke way of tattooing, and I haven't been there to witness it. I just hear through the grapevine of like what they do, and I hear a lot of people say that they'll fast before they do it, pray, go to water, those sorts of things.
Thank you. Nolan?
Yeah, I like to pray too. I like to be mindful of, like what Tristen said. I don't know, you just have to be in that place where you're just mindful of them, like being faithful with that, I don't know if that's the best word, faithful, but just honoring people. And like, I think the best way to honor them is to set your intention, set your intention on what you're about to do, the permanency of it, and being just honoring that. And so oftentimes I'll pray to, I have my own opinions, I have my own worldview, I have my own stuff, but it's not about me, it's about them. I have this philosophy that I was given that, if you what the heck, why am I blanking? But the philosophy is it's we're here to support them. We're here to support their journey. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about anything like that. So oftentimes I'll pray just to be tolerant, to be kind, to be respectful, to listen twice as much as I talk, and just to honor that gift.
Thank you. I'll pass it back to Jasper for the next question.
Yeah, so Angela in the chat says, thanks to all the panelists for sharing your stories, resilience and inspiration to us all. As a non-Indigenous person who is trying to connect with the history of the land and people, I find that as Indigenous people reclaim their power, it enables me and others to connect as well. So thank you all for what you do. And how do you feel about tattooing non-Indigenous people with tribal tattoos? Is it offensive in your craft and reclaiming your culture?
Would anyone like to step up to the mic for that one?
Well, so I do a lot, like a lot of floral and things like that. I would have to say, which I tattoo a lot of non-Indigenous people all the time. I think it's beautiful, and like ones that are connecting and learning the work. And even I do Slavics. I've done them on non-Indigenous people that are, they're teachers. They teach the language and how to write it. And I think it's beautiful. I think that's really amazing, you know what I mean, to have outlets like that. But I think like the traditional, like, you know, the traditional ceremony, you know, the chin lines and, you know, our dots and things like that. I think, that I'm not, you know, I don't think that that should be shared, just because, you know, we're reconnecting and learning what those mean to us and how sacred, and, you know, that it's in our blood. And, you know, maybe one day in the future, once, you know, we've reclaimed and we're here and it's so thick, you know, like in New Zealand, their street signs are their names, and you know, in school, everyone, even non-Indigenous people, have to learn the language of that land. I think that's amazing and beautiful. And maybe one day, like they tattoo their traditional markings all over anybody all the time, because it's so thick and they have it and it's so strong, you know. But I think for now, you know, the traditional like tribal type, I really feel like that should be left for folks, like reconnecting and like the Indigenous folks to that nation, to that tribe. I think, you know, that's just my opinion though.
When it comes to tattooing what would be deemed as traditional tattoos on non-Indigenous people, I definitely take my time with each individual person, talking to them. Not necessarily, I don't want to say interview, but I should take a couple minutes to get to know you, to see like, what are your true intentions? Like, what is this? Why do you want this? What is this? What is this going to mean to you? You know, when people are adopted into tribes, they're not entitled to rights, but they are now collecting a responsibility to that tribe, right? It's a responsibility, not an entitlement, or, you know, that sort of thing. So I want to see who they are, where they're coming from. I also want to make something for them that's unique to them, right? I would never duplicate something that I created for somebody and make the copycat thing on somebody else, because that was for that specific person. So it just kind of varies from situation to situation.
Yeah, I agree too. Spending time with people, I think, you know, like I said earlier, the tattoo experience isn't just ink and skin, it's everything involved. And, you know, people from outside of our culture come in and they witness how we treat each other. They witness, well, for me, even how obvious it is that I have an accent, you know, or when you spend time with people in the tattoo shop, you're learning about each other. And I think that that's can be a powerful mending tool. I don't think that, you know, on a wide scale, reconciliation is possible without reconciling here first. And I say that in a serious way, because I know that I've had to heal my heart and reconcile with my past and reconcile with the history of my family and reconcile all that, so that when I'm in those situations, I'm not spewing resentment, bitterness, and hate towards anybody. I think that the power of the time that we're with people that may not necessarily understand the way we do stuff, there's a powerful transaction happening there. You know, it's hard to respect and honor something if you're ignorant, you know. Not that I'm saying we have to educate everybody, but I mean, like I said, how I was raised, I was taught to respect, and, you know, just honoring that. So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for their answers. You know, I would say, when I think about this question, I think I just have to pull it apart a little bit. When I think about tribal tattoos, for me, that's too broad of a definition. I would say that when I think about it, I would make it more specific to be distinctive to my own situation. So how do I feel about tattooing non-Indigenous people with Intlakatmuk ancestral skin marks? And so when I, you know, make it more specific, I think what Tristen was saying, it also helps to be even more specific in terms of the types of tattoos that fit into this category of Intlakatmuk skin markings. You know, there's general marks that we put on the body, for example, in non-ancestral placements. for beautification, say, or for some type of healing in terms of reconnecting to one's body. You know, those marks I think are definitely appropriate to share with a wider audience outside of the community. But when it comes to facial markings or very specific markings that are connected to specific family members, specific people who had dreams about them, then that's not appropriate to share those things with the wider community, because those marks identify us as Indigenous people when we walk out into the world. You know, I was at a cashier at the grocery store the other day, and she said, "Are you Indigenous?" I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, your face tattoos gave you away," as if I was hiding. But it was just an interesting turn of phrase. And so for me, it's really connecting with those things that the facial markings are very distinctive, and we can see ourselves reconnecting to who we are, our communities, our cultures, and our places, especially with those facial markings. And then when I continue that conversation, I would say I always talk about it as rights, relationship, and responsibilities. And so somebody in that situation has to have rights, relationship, and responsibility to those marks. And that could be the person giving those marks. So the practitioner, the tattoo artist, has to have rights, relationship, and responsibility. And so they are using those rights and those responsibilities to share that in a way that honors their community and their culture. In other situations, I tattoo people who are not from my community, for example, Mi'kmaq, because I'm in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded land of the Mi'kmaq people. I will share Mi'kmaq markings with them because they're Mi'kmaq. But I wouldn't share Mi'kmaq markings with a non-Mi'kmaq person, for example, an Nthakamic person, because I don't have the rights to it, and they don't have the rights to wear it, but the Mi'kmaq person does. And so it's really honoring the fact that we each as practitioners have rights, relationship, and responsibility to our own ancestral visual language, and sharing that as we see fit. And I would also say on top of that is also, I find it challenging sometimes when we start to point fingers at people from communities that are not our own, as if we do not honor the integrity and the sovereignty of each nation to decide who and who can't do those marks. And so I would say that when we think about reconciliation, it's also not only about us and people who are part of the larger body politic, wherever that we exist, but also amongst each other. And so do I have a right to call out somebody who is from another nation when they're doing marks? I don't necessarily think so. Maybe I can reach out to a friend I know who has rights, relationship, and responsibility. Say, hey, I don't know about this. Do you know about it? They can deal with it. But is it my right to point fingers? I don't really think so, because I honor the sovereignty of each nation to make those distinctions within their own communities and cultures. And so just, so to answer the question, no, it's not offensive, but it could be offensive depending on the situation, as Nathalie said. I'll get off my soapbox and see if there's any further questions or any other comments going forward.
We have one more question if we want that. It's, what are some tattoo markings you bear or have tattooed onto others that you're really proud of? I believe Natalie's already talked about one, but it'd be good to hear more.
Give a second. Oh, yeah.
I got Tristen.
Nice.
It's a hard one. Now I'm like reaching back and I'm like, okay, which ones?
Well, I feel like you know, it's hard to keep track because there's just so much. There's just so much that we do. I think my pride comes from the fact that people are willing to wear, you know, these designs that are really precious to me, especially with Flash. You know, it's one thing to do custom and to draw something for somebody, but if you're drawing Flash, that's the stuff that you like. That's the stuff that makes you tick, the stuff that you're really passionate about. And when people want my flash, especially like, you know, the life and death stuff, the bone and the flower stuff that I try to push, it's really, really awesome. And then, like I said before, it creates this platform for me to share. You know, I don't think it's necessary to explain everything all the time, but it gives you a platform for discussion. Like even today, I tattooed this woman who had seen a previous flash, and she messaged me about it. It's a lady head, but it's kind of just line work, and so it looks almost like wood grain. You have the outline of facial features, and then another outline, and then another outline, then another outline. It's like wood grain, like the rings of a tree. And my intention behind doing that was generations of, you know, powerful women in this flash piece. And she said when she saw it, it just resonated with her. Originally, the one that she saw was 3, because I did one that had 3 rings. And she said, man, I need to, because there's me, there's my mom, there's my grandma, and my daughter. And you know, that kind of stuff is what fires me up, especially when it gets beyond the surface, and that people start to identify with what's being shown or what's attempted to being said. And as always, there's flowers in there too. It's pretty cool. So anyway.
Yeah, when I think about this question, I approach it in a few different ways. The first way is I've been working on large pieces. So of course, when I think about the large body suits, the large back pieces, torso suits, and I think about the journey that each of those people has taken in receiving those ancestral marks in such a visible, all-encompassing, embodied way, you know, that really, and I would say part of that is also the time spent with each of those individuals, you know, 100 hours, 130 hours sitting with somebody, tattooing them, you know, those are some of the things that I think about, and helps me to see the way, as Nolan put it, you know, those are coming. So those folks who are coming, the people to be are coming, and they can see that and be proud of who they are, you know. And then I would say the other way that I approach that question, the thing that actually fires me up and makes me the proudest, is to see the marks that those folks that I have taught or helped to teach, either through the Earthline Tattoo School alongside my friends, Jordan Bennett, Amy Malbeuf, Amber Lee John, etc., you know, and then those folks that I've shared the teachings of how to hand poke and skin stitch. You know, those are the things that make me the proudest and make me the most fired up, because I can see that this is a practice that is alive, and that we are stepping into the next generation with a generation of children, of people, of Infikatmuk people, of Métis people, Cree, Mohawk, Cherokee people, Seal people, who don't know anything other than a vibrant tattooing tradition. So when I think about that question resonates with me when I think about those people who are in community, who are doing those marks, and they show up on my feed. Just brings a smile to my heart when I think about how powerful each of our communities is, as each of us step into the embodiment of our ancestors' resilience, our ancestors' power, and the stories that have brought us to today. So that's the way that I resonate with that question.
Deadly, bro. Deadly.
It's the hair, bro. It's the hair.
Well, I don't know, man. It's the words too. Maybe it's a little bit of your must do, eh?
I'd have to say for me, like, I think every piece, because everything is just so unique. It's really hard to pick, you know, one that just really sticks out. A lot of my designs that I kind of come up with, I dream about them. You know, I'll go to bed and I'll ask kind of, I'll ask the creator kind of for like guidance on this tattoo, and it's really cool. And I'll wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, and I'll just write down my ideas, or I'll grab my iPad and sketch it out really quick. And then I go back to bed and I wake up, I'm like, yes, like this is amazing. And there's been so many times when I've drawn something for a person, and they're like, wow, how did you know that? And they usually just write, oh, I would love to get a tattoo on my forearm with some florals and maybe a moon. And I'm like, okay. And then, that's kind of what I ask about, like not them, but just out there. And when I draw these things, they're like, how did you know, I have 5 children, or this was for my late dad, and this was, this represents him, and just all the things, I added a wolf, or I added a heart, or I added all these other things that just kind of came. And that's kind of how a lot of my designs kind of come to be. So it's really like, it's super cool. They're all so different, everyone at the shop always laughs at me. Oh, it's florals again. I'm like, yeah, but to us, to the person that I'm with, and it's so different. Even though to everybody else, maybe it looks the same, but it's not their journey. It's this person. Then it's I don't know. It's really cool to be able to be a part of that. And just I think I love every single one I do. Every time I'm done, I'm always like, wow. I was like, I know it's crazy, it's like, it just looks so different on the paper, to the skin. The skin just makes it come alive. It has life, and not that it didn't have life on paper, but to have that shared energy with one another. It made it its own thing, its own entity. It's so nice. It's beautiful. I love all the tattoos I get to do.
I'd like to backpack off of that. Kind of earlier, what I was talking about, being from Oklahoma, doing a lot of people's first tattoos is a lot of fun, because then that you get to see them, I don't know, like prove to themselves how strong they are, because like they're excited, they're scared, they don't know what to expect, they think the worst, and then we start and they're like, oh, and then they have to deal with this annoying pain, and then be rewarded with this thing afterwards that they get to keep forever. And I love what we do.
Awesome. Any other questions there?
Yep, just a real quick one. Is there anything upcoming or news you'd like to promote or share with us?
Batosh 2024, July 17th to 20th, with me and Gina will be tattooing there for 4 days. It's a Métis national event. 50,000 people came through the gate last year. So put it in your calendar and come check it out.
See here, I'm looking. I have something. I know I have something.
Well, I would say that, I host a weekly podcast that comes out every Tuesday, the Transformative Marks podcast, and each of the panelists has an interview up already, and each week, a new conversation happens, and that ranges from a variety of cultures and nations across the world, as well as a variety of topics, right from the ancestral tools and technologies of hand poke, skin stitch, hand tap, hammering, cutting, etc., scarification, all the way to machine work, and also not only discriminating against folks who don't do work associated with ancestral tools and technology, but I think that many Indigenous tattoo artists, professional tattoo artists, do the work in a way that speaks to their community, their culture, and their teachings. And so, folks who do black and gray, etc. Another black and gray, hey Tristen? No. Another portrait? No, just kidding. But yeah, no, just holding everyone up who does the work, regardless of where they fit in the spectrum in terms of their connection to their communities and their cultures. So check it out every Tuesday.
I'm gonna give a little shout out in November, I'll be at the Indigenous Tattoo Music Festival happening November 22nd to the 24th in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then also, if anybody wants to check it out, there's this podcast I think that would, resonate with what we talked about here. It's called Inchua, INCHUNWA. It's a podcast that they talk a lot about the Southeastern traditional tattoo revitalization movement.
Cool. I was going to actually mention the Indigenous Tattoo Music Fest as well, but I'll be there with Nathalie. So come and say hi.
Oh yeah, and I forgot, I will be in the museum July 16th to the 19th, tattooing live into Cutmuk Blackwork, so you can come and check it out. I may not have time to chat because we'll be doing a lot of big work, but you can come check out the process of what's happening, and I would second the Inchua podcast. Go check it out, it's dope. Available on all platforms, so.
Awesome. So I think that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our panelists and to Dion for your really thoughtful questions and your really thoughtful answers. You can find Dion and the rest of our panelists on our website and follow them on their Instagram or wherever you guys are on the internet. And if you're in Vancouver, come see the True Tribal exhibition. It's on until the end of the summer. All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.